Well, thank you very much for that little introduction. And I just want to give you permission to take your shoes off, because that's what I've just done, to go and stand by the door if you need to. I reckon the floor is maybe half a degree cooler, so if you need to sit on the floor instead of on a chair, basically feel free to do what you need to do to feel comfortable. I'm going to speak for about 20 minutes and then we're going to finish with some worship at the end of that. So do what you need to do. Well, thank you for the introduction. I'm just going to add a little bit more to that. So my name is Ruth, and I, like Bishop Markham said, am lead for Growing Younger Disciples, which is a similar job to Aidan, and we frequently have good chats about our jobs, which we both love very much. And I'm very pleased that no one got up and left when Bishop Markham said that I live in Mansfield, because I know that might be a sore relationship for some of you if you live in Chesterfield. So please don't hold it against me. We're fairly new to Mansfield, and my husband is vicar there, and we moved during COVID, so a weird time to start ministry, but a great one to see what God was doing. So that's a bit about what I do, and who am I as a person? You might want to know that as I start. Well, I love being creative. I love making things, whether that's a craft project or food, and I love being outside. I'm never going to climb Everest or row the Atlantic or anything like that, but I love just plonking on a beach or halfway up a mountain or just, resting in a place like that. And if I can make something outside, that's like the absolute sweet spot. So that's some facts about me, but me as a person, that's a trickier thing to unpick. And sometimes I find it tricky because you're all adults. If this was a kids session, I don't know about you, but children are much easier to talk to than adults. But I'm going to tell you anyway. So I am good at doing, but I'm less good at theorising stuff. I don't particularly like to overthink. No, that's not true. I overthink a lot of things, but I don't like to overthink what I'm doing. I like getting stuck into a new idea or a new project, but seeing things through I'm less good at that. I like new ideas and putting them into practice. I'm not a big fan of technology, but I love seeing God working through different ways of communicating. I'm empathetic. I like creating spaces where people feel safe. But most of all, I really, really, really love seeing people come to know God and see their lives transformed for Him. I'm guessing by those smiles and a couple of nods that we share that, so that's a real joy. Why am I telling you all of this? Well, it's going to come back to that in a few minutes, but it's part of the reason why I'm here with you today. Aidan and I were having a little conversation a while ago, and I don't recall exactly what the conversation is, but my guess is, based on most of ours, that it would be about diocesan youth and children's ministry, and about churches who are trying really hard to reach young people, about a generation of young people who are hungry for truth and for Jesus, and in a world where if you're not moving forwards, it sometimes feels like you're moving backwards. Now this sometimes leads churches to ask the question, what's new, what's shiny, what fun, new, interesting thing can we do to attract children to our churches? I'm just going to drop it because that's not going to tuck in. And it was off the back of a conversation like that I used a phrase that I don't know where I came up with it or whether I've stolen it from someone, but it's become my new favourite phrase, which is youth and children's ministry isn't complicated, but it is hard work. With these words fresh out of my mouth, Aidan interrupted me and said, stop, right, you're going to come and speak, and you're going to speak on that. Now, I don't know if you've ever been asked to do a talk based on one half-formed thought and sentence, and then I had nothing more to say on it other than that. But over the past couple of months, God has been speaking to me about what I should say. And actually, I feel like it's been something that I've really needed to hear. So my hope is that you guys get something out of it, but if you don't, God's already done working me through it, so that's all good. It's achieved something. So hopefully, it'll be something that you need to hear as well. So let's dive in. Any of you ever seen the programme Grand Designs? Excellent. So this is a great show, very easy watching. Someone, usually with more ambition than they have skill or money, takes a lush plot of land or a falling down building or some completely unsuitable building to live in, like a sewer works, and they try and build their dream home. They have a picture of what they want to do and they go after it. the presenter on this programme, who is ever sarcastic and very hindsight heavy, I knew this wasn't going to work. He comes to visit them a few times, he sees where they're at, he journeys through them through the highs and the lows, and then comes to visit them right at the end, when miraculously something beautiful has been built. They're sitting on an immaculately decorated house on pristine sofas, showing, oh yes, it was hard work and we'd never do it again. Unless something else interesting comes along. 7 years ago, my husband and I moved to Newark for him to be a vicar. And he had just trained as a vicar school and was moving to be a curate. He was ordained in South Warminster, a very beautiful part of the world if you've ever been there. And just along the road from South Warminster, there was a house being built. Now, it wasn't quite on the scale of the Grand Design's house, but it was pretty epic. Beautiful local stone, lots of wood, a sweeping driveway, and windows that looked right out over the cathedral and into the Bishop's Garden, which was slightly odd, but it was still a lovely view. A year later, we went back for Chris to be priested, and it looked like the house, well, there was a bit of progress, but not a huge amount. The drive was probably a bit more drivey, and there had maybe been some more windows put in, but it was definitely not finished. During the following year, I started working for the diocese, and there's a lovely little walk that I go on from the office, through the fields, past this house. And it was on one of these walks that I felt like God was really speaking to me. Week after week, as I walked past this house, slowly, things were being built. And there was one day that God said, look at the house, look at it. And there were days when there had been some significant change, but maybe the hedge had gone in or some more windows had gone on. But it was really slow progress. And at that time, that moment that God said, look at the house, Chris and I, my husband, felt like we were doing the equivalent in our ministries of digging out foundations, wheelbarrowing gravel, and taking down a wall that we'd just put up because it was a bit wonky. And God, in that moment of saying, consider the house, it reminded me of those Grand Designs programmes, where often years and years are covered in 1 hour's programme. It shows the high highs when things have gone really well and something beautiful has happened, and the low lows when people are down on their knees asking for help. But very rarely does Grand Designs ever show the everyday graft, the struggles, the just getting on. And bizarrely, but because God is good, he took me to the story of Moses. Now, you might be more familiar with the story of Moses than you are with Grand Designs, but if you're new to the Bible, I'm going to give you a quick recap. So Moses is a Hebrew, he's one of the family of God, but he finds himself living in Egypt along with the rest of the Hebrews. And because the Egyptians have got nasty and scared of this people group, they're wanting to kill all of the baby boys. And I don't know what parenting handbook Moses' family looked in when they decided that the way out of this situation was to plonk Moses in a basket and send him off down the river. Thankfully, the Egyptian princess found him, and she was having a wash there, and she scooped up this baby, took him home and raised him in the palace. 40 years old, Moses sees one of the Egyptians beating up a Hebrew. He gets really angry, kills him, someone finds out, so Moses hot-foots it into the desert. Then it gets a little bit film crewy, because then Moses meets some beautiful women by a well, goes off and marries them, and tends the flock of his father, Jethro. And you're caught up, and I'm going to read a couple of verses from Exodus 2, 23, if you'd like to join me now. It says, during that long period, the king of Egypt died. The Israelites groaned in their slavery and cried out, and their cry for help because of their slavery went up to God. God heard their groaning, and he remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. So God looked on the Israelites and was concerned about them. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the desert and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in the flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So Moses thought, understatement of the century, I will go and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. Okay, in those 5 little verses, we have 40 years of Moses' life. A long time later, I think, is the exact phrase it uses. Have any of you ever watched Big Brother? A few. It's a bit of an old one, and I personally wasn't a big fan, but I hope you know the good old Geordie voiceover. I hope this isn't offensive to anyone. Dear 23, in the Big Brother house, the contestants are having breakfast. Now, I don't know how hard they had to work sometimes to make that programme interesting when it was just following some people trapped in a house. Dear 17, Sam is cleaning his teeth and Robin's making the bed. The contestants spent about between 64 and 93 days in the house. And I wonder whether, if there was a version of Moses' life narrated by the Big Brother voice, it might sound something like, Dear 5,560, Moses is woken up in the night and is staring at the stars. Dear 9,524, Moses enjoys a nice drink of water from a stream. Dear 13,568, Moses is taken to the sheep to some new pasture and is staring off into the distance, wondering what on earth his life has come to. It's then, on approximately day 14,600, 40 years after fleeing into the wilderness, that it suddenly becomes something a bit more dramatic. Dear 14,600, Moses sees a bush that is on fire but doesn't appear to be burning up and hears God's voice. What? 14,600 days, which presumably contained a lot of loneliness, a lot of rescuing sheep, a lot of improvising whatever he needed, some time reflecting on the life he left behind in Egypt, contemplating, navigating the in-laws probably, and much time to learn to be patient. Then on day 14,600, his life is turned upside down, and God speaks. Now, I don't know what led you into the world of children and youth ministry, whether it was your heart's desire to always do it, whether you had some skills and thought this was a good use of them, or if there was a gap on a rota and you felt guilted into it. Whatever your calling, my guess is it probably wasn't a burning bush that didn't burn up and a conversation with the very presence of God. And if it was, please come see me afterwards because I would love to hear your story. But that is where Moses finds himself. After years of seclusion, of figuring out his own way, of plodding from one thing to another at his own pace, suddenly he's brought into God's presence and into God's time and space. How does he respond? I'm sure you know, but I'm going to go through it. Although I like to think that if it was me, I would be like, yes, I am all in, straight away, no questions asked, let's go for it. I suspect my answer would be more like Moses' was. What? Me? Why me? How does God respond? Well, he says, I will be with you. Which doesn't quite answer Moses' question. Moses' second question, what if I tell them that a burning bush sent me to you? They're going to think I'm a bit crazy. I'm obviously paraphrasing a little bit here. And here we get one of those moments that I think in words written down on a page kind of gets a little bit lost. Because this is the moment in scripture, in world history, when God shares his name with his people. This is the God who, despite Moses wandering through the wilderness, still knew Moses. The God that Moses was taught about as a child is suddenly present before him. This name is the name above all names. I am who I am. I am the God of your ancestors. This, I am, is my name forever. So, I think this, look at that, what a pro. I think this name is incredibly significant to us today in youth and children's ministry. In our world where it feels like there are new gadgets and inventions every 5 minutes, which even if the young claim to know what's going on, I still think they're a little bit lost sometimes. Our human scale time frame feels urgent. Everything feels like it should be done yesterday. And in a culture where we are so obsessed with ourselves, what am I doing? How am I doing? How well am I doing? Am I producing or consuming the right amount? Everything that is currently driving our culture. But God's name flips this. God's name is I am. Jump back with me to the start of our time together, and I was telling you a little bit about myself. What I do, where I live, what I like, who I am as a person. But there was something that I forgot to tell you. Something groundbreaking groundbreaking and revelationary. Are you ready? You look like you are. I feel like I'm going to disappoint you because I know that you know this thing about me, but that it's sometimes something I forget. I'm not God. I know, you don't look surprised at all. And I just want you to be assured, I don't proactively think I am God, but sometimes I forget that I'm not. Does that make sense? Sometimes I get a bit muddled and I forget that it's not all about me, that I'm living in a much bigger story, a longer and more eternal story. So if I'm not God, I'm not in charge of my story, who is? Well, this is what Moses finds out when he finds out God's name. Moses asks, "Who sends me?" And God responds, "I am." God's name reflects his very being. God is. God always has been, and God always will be. It's all about God. And if God always has been, always is, and always will be, then all I need to do is give over everything, let him be in control of my life, and find my space within that. Now, gloriously, again, as we see with Moses, this doesn't count us out of being part of God's story. Moses was still tasked with a terrifying and massive job. He was tasked with going to Pharaoh and petitioning him to release the Israelites. But it was on God's term. It was God's plan. And Moses learned this. And in God's name, Moses learned the power and the purpose for what he was going to do. So how do we do this? How do we live in the knowledge of this and do our ministry of it? I think I got a bit of an answer to this about a year ago. I was facing something that I wasn't particularly looking forward to, which turns out it was an amazing opportunity. I have loved almost every minute of it, but I was really worried about it. So worried, in fact, that I was telling myself, it's okay, you just have to get through the next week and then you can chill after it. I was on a walk, just near where we live. It's an old pit tip that they've transformed into a beautiful country park. And I was coming up the hill, and from the other side there was a man on his mountain bike with probably his son behind him. We just reached the top of the hill when the guy turned back to his, I'm guessing, son, and he was a bit behind him, and said, "You are allowed to enjoy the uphill bits, you know. You just need to find your rhythm." Now, I found this a moment of pure inspiration. I suspect this man has no idea the impact this had on my life, and I'd love to go back and tell him. But it was a great challenge to me. How do I find the rhythm in the thing that God has called me to? How do I not just try and hurtle along at my own speed, getting to the top so exhausted that I didn't enjoy a moment of the uphill, and just looking to the downhill on the other side? How do I go through the boredom of the everyday? The youth and children's ministry equivalent of day 9,345, when there's a sheep stuck in a hedge and I've got to get them out. But if we're observant for a moment with Moses, we see in verse 3 him say, "I wonder what that's all about." In Moses' everyday, in the boredom, in the monotony, in the hardness of his everyday ministry, he hasn't lost joy or wonder or curiosity. He's curious about this thing over there that doesn't seem normal. So he turns aside from his everyday, don't know what the father-in-law's going to think of the fact that he's left the sheep, and steps into discovering what God has called for him. And can we remember for a moment how old Moses is at this point? Are any of you guys about 80? Yes. 80-year-olds at the back. Would you like a brand new ministry where you have to go and lead a crowd of hundreds of thousands of people, a whole nation in fact, into a wilderness, go and petition Pharaoh to let them go? Your life might be in danger doing that, and then go off into the wilderness, which is not designed to support a small nation, lead them for 40 years because they're really stubborn and annoying. No, thank you. I suspected that might be your answer. I'm really glad you're here, and I'm really grateful for the ministry that you have, but I'm guessing that heavy political negotiations are probably not what you're going to look for next. But Moses is, and I think God, in his infinite wisdom and kindness, had well prepared Moses for this time of his life. I suspect that on those days when Moses was having to manhandle another stubborn sheep, that there was just a little bit of that learning. When he was leading an unruly flock of sheep through the wilderness, God was teaching him. Although maybe it's not super comparable, because on days when people feel hard work, the idea of running off and going into a wilderness with a bunch of sheep sometimes feels quite dreamy. So how did Moses do it? How did he go from sheep in the wilderness to leading a whole nation of people? Well, I think the difference is God's proximity. This time Moses knows, I am. He has spent time in God's presence, in his actual presence. He has regular face-to-face time with God, up mountains, so much so that his face glows from time to time. That sounds dreamy. I'd love to disappear up a mountain and have some face-to-face time with God. But it's not as ridiculous as you might imagine. That time is available for us too. Quiet time in contemplation with God. Time in the Bible, in worship and in prayer. Those are all things that sustain me, and I hope sustain us as we minister. This is comforting and freeing, but it's also a reminder that we're joining in with God's story. When we spend time in the Word, we see that this isn't just for something that happened for them, it's for now as well. When we worship, we turn our eyes away from our everyday into the eternal song of heaven. We're joining in with the chapters of God's story, which is comforting and freeing. It's also a reminder that this story moves at God's pace, which is often not the pace that I want to move at. It's a story I desperately want to be part of, and I love being part of, but sometimes it doesn't move how quickly I want it to. And I'm increasingly realising that that's okay. So, ministry with children, young people and their families. I don't think it's complicated. We've heard lots of different ways today. You connect with them, you share life with them, you introduce them to Jesus and you journey with them. That doesn't sound complicated to me, but it is hard work. It can be a slog, hours, days, years of plodding through what feels like wilderness. And my heart has broken so many times over the lives of the children and young people, people that we've worked with. The joys that they've journeyed through and the struggles as well. Doing life and even in a couple of cases death too. If I had time, I would tell you the stories of Joel, of Hannah, of Mira, of Kit, of Cody, Amelia, of David and Isaac, of Tina and Marnie, of Isaac, of Poppy and of Cody. And of the two that break my heart and make it sing the most, of Abby and of Esme. Ministry with these beautiful children was not complicated, but it's been hard work. It's not flashy, but boy is it worthwhile. It's not instant, it's not immediate, it's not fast on my speed, but my goodness, is it worth it? And my goodness, does it have eternal significance? The thing that keeps me going is God. I shouldn't know that, shouldn't I? The thing that keeps me going is God, and increasingly realising that this isn't my story, that this is God's story, and that I'm just invited into it. I'm invited to glimpse what God is doing, to be welcomed into the beauty and the brokenness and the chaos of those precious children and young people's lives. Because he loves them so much, and it is a joy to be a part of it. It's not complicated, but it is hard work. And if you're feeling like, this wasn't very inspiring, this sounds like it's really hard work, I'm not sure I've got the strength to do this, that's okay, because guess what? You don't need to. You're not God. Maybe you need reminding of that. You're not God, but God is. And God is, I am. And if you'd like to stand, I'm going to read a little bit with you from this book. And if you'd like to join in with the I ams, that would be wonderful. In the days to come, when you're questioning, needing, searching, wondering, asking and struggling, you will find his sufficiency at the end of every desperate prayer. When you cry out for all the things that you are not, you'll know his answer is I am. For every cry there is one answer. I need help. I am. I need hope. I am. Who could possibly be smart enough to figure this out? I am. What works? I am. What lasts? I am. What's the latest thing? I am. What's the hippest thing? I am. I need a fresh story. I am. I need a bigger story. I am. Nothing's real anymore. I am. Who can I trust? I am. I'm not sure who's on my team. I am. Nobody's listening to me. I am. I don't have a prayer. I am. I can't hold on. I am. My kids deserve more. I am. I'm pouring into others. Who's pouring into me? I am. If we fail, who will get the job done? I am. I've given all I can give and it's not enough. I am. I quit. I am. I can't. I am. I need a fix, a drink, or something else to keep me going. I am. Somebody just look after me. I am. And what does this great I am say of himself? He says to you and me, I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the resurrection and the life. I am Saviour, I am Jesus. The solution, the restorer, the builder, the answer, the wise one, the coming one, the mighty one, everything you need. I am the Lord, and there is no other. I am God, and there is none beside me. I am who I am, and that is my name, my memorial name to every single generation.